So, I welcome everybody. Dan Rothert, top student athlete recruiting. I am here with Mark Salisbury from Tuition Fit, and just to give you a little bit of a rundown, top student athlete recruiting. I help college soccer players and athletes of all kinds, to be honest, help find the best opportunity to play college sports and soccer specifically. And get more exposure by reaching out to coaches and helping the student athletes reach out to coaches, being able to find the correct level of play and knowing that type of thing, and having the experience to be able to do that. I help my clients save some money on college, and that's what this is about tonight. And then reduce stress of the process is a big player in the room, right? There's a lot of things going on out there. There's a lot of camps and choices in this world to help get you in those processes, and it becomes complicated. And so I help my clients get to that point to have a better opportunity. Mark runs a company called Tuition Fit. I'll let him tell a little bit of history on that and his story a little bit. He's also a soccer guy, so I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah, I'm a little older and grizzled than you are, but it's funny. I don't think we ever coached against each other, but I'm sort of amazed that we didn't, because we have like all these people that we know in the same world.
Right.
But I spent 25 years working in colleges and universities, and the first 11 of those years was in college athletics. I was head men's and women's soccer coach at University of Missouri-Rolla, which is now Missouri University of Science and Technology, and then went from there to coach women's soccer at Central Michigan University, and then spent a few more years coaching at Idaho State University before hanging up the spikes as a coach. Spent 11 years doing that, and most of that time did Olympic development stuff and camps in the summer, and lots of sunburn on the top of my head from it. So, just once you do that for a while, it's never out of your blood. So, but after I coached, I spent some time going sort of deeper into how higher ed works, did a PhD in studying how colleges and universities work, and spent some time in academic administration before starting Tuition Fit, which is really just a simple way for the public to create their own price transparency tool. College pricing, as we're going to talk about, is a real fog, and it's a real frustration and a huge stressor for lots of people. And the reality is that the actual numbers are all out there. They're just all out there, ones and twos in the award letters that kids get every year. So Tuition Fit, the idea was, why don't we just build a way for everybody to share that information securely, anonymizing all the personal stuff, but organizing it in the same way that colleges organize prices, and then the public can use it. And we don't need the colleges to be more transparent, because we got it sorted out ourselves. And after a couple of years of doing that, we've had some success in getting people to do this, because people don't want to get stuck with a price they don't need to pay. So that's what Tuition Fit is. And nice to do a webinar with somebody right on the same river that I am.
That's right. We're not too far from each other, right up the river from each other. I'm in Dubuque. Mark is in Davenport, so not too far away. So I'm gonna start with I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and this is just a little slide I have based on, I'll do men's soccer, I'll do women's soccer. We'll look at them both, right? And the number of schools playing soccer in each division, and the number of scholarships that are available at those schools, and why that, and then we'll talk about academic scholarships and things like that, and merit awards and things like that. And so there's going to be some terminology tonight that Mark and I will exchange, and we'll explain what those are a little bit in terms of that stuff too, because some of this stuff might be new to you. But in the soccer scholarship world, everyone talks about scholarships, and obviously, they're a hard thing to get, I'll be honest. And soccer, is a little bit, it's different than football and basketball. Football and basketball are called head count sports. So the ones you see on TV, and, but in football and basketball and some other sports in Division I, every player gets either a full ride or they are a walk-on. It's one or the other. It's not both. You don't get partial scholarships. You get either full ride. Like basketball has, 14 Division I full ride scholarships. Everybody on the team is full ride, and they might have a couple extra guys that are on the bench or women on the bench that are walk-ons, but 14 is their scholarship. That's a lot. It's the whole team, right? And it's all the backups and everybody like that. Soccer is different. So at Division I in men's soccer, there's 204 schools playing Division I men's soccer. We get 9.9 scholarships is the max. So a school can offer up to 9.9. That's the max funding a school can get for that school. Some schools don't give that money. Some schools give 3. There's schools out there that give less. There's some schools that give the full max. If they're fully funded, it's called, they're giving 9.9.
That's a really important point to make, Dan. I'm glad you mentioned it, because this is something a lot of people, if they don't know, if they know enough to know that there's 9.9 scholarships, which is, not even something a lot of people know, but then that doesn't mean those schools give that much in aid. You and I could mention a couple of Division I schools that are pretty well known that are right in our area. They're not even close to 9.9 scholarships.
100%, right? And that's that's spot on. And so it's, and if you think about the roster size too, you're looking at, okay, a team might have 28 to 30 people on a roster, sometimes more, right? And sometimes a little bit less, but sometimes even a lot more. I've heard of Division I rosters having up to 40 right now, right? And some of these things. And so if you do the math, let's say a school is fully funded. Let's just say it for the sake of it, and they have 30 people on the roster. It turns out to be about a third scholarship per player. The coach decides how much money you're going to get. It's up to the coach. And, some people might get more, and that means other people are getting less, right? Or there's more walk-ons and things like that. So, there's a combination of, that type of thing. But I don't want to go back to that, so it's an average third scholarship or something like that. So I talked to a coach the other day. And the first thing out of that coach's mouth was, what are that student's grades? All right. And it wasn't, they're a good player. They're probably good enough to play at that school. And he said, great, because guess what? I need a center back, and this player fits the mold. And if they come to our school, they get, 50% off tuition for their grades, a merit award, right? And a merit award is based on your academic profile, your ACT, your GPA, those types of things. And so I'm going to get 50% off the top, and then he's like, I can give, a 50% athletic scholarship to that kid because I need that player. I need a center back, and I think they're good enough, and I have the money available, now the merit award was, more for tuition only. So there's words here, right, that are hidden. So it wasn't for room and board. So there was still going to be some fees in room and board they were going to have to pay. It wasn't going to be a complete full ride, but it was going to be darn close, right? It was going to be within, they're going to have to pay a couple $1,000 a year, right? So at the end of the day, those things come out. But we'll talk about that momentarily. There's terminology in there that is used, and sometimes with the way schools present their packages and offers, and Mark, you're probably the expert on this, is they sometimes it's hidden, or it doesn't tell the whole story, or it's a little bit complicated, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times the financial aid offer letter is not designed to be like the nutrition on the back of a food product, right? Where it's supposed to be like pure, honest truth, unvarnished. The award letter's designed to make it look as attractive as possible, because they're still trying to get you to come, right? So they're not going to be necessarily as clear as you'd like it to be. They're not going to necessarily tell you that, yeah, actually, you're going to have to come up with another $30,000. So it is super important to be able to see those award letters and understand what's in there and really make sense of it.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I want to get through this slide, but I have some other questions about that. Division two has 200 schools playing. You know, the fully funded on the men's side is 9. Again, are there that many schools fully funded? I don't know, like not around here. But you know, there's some athletic money, and they can still get you a pretty good package, but you're not gonna probably get the combination of everything to be paid for. Division three is the biggest division. There's 404 men's soccer teams in Division three. They do not offer athletic scholarships, but they sometimes have a little more play in the. And we're going to talk about this too, is like in terms of being able to leverage offers and ask for more and things like that. There's a little more play there. NAIA is a different division. So if you're not familiar with NAIA, it's a different governing body, right? It's National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. They have just their schools. What division you are is chosen by the school, the board of the school at some point, right? That's not the size of the school. It's not, you know, some people think it's based on, you know, enrollment and size and things like that. It's a school philosophy, and the school has chosen that for several reasons. One is financial, because of the amount of scholarships they give, means they're not making as much money on a kid. If they're giving you 9.9 scholarships out for soccer, that's 9.9 tuitions they're not getting in their coffer to help pay for to keep the lights on, right? Like that's just part of it. It's a financial decision. It's also a balance between academic and athletic decisions. So at Division one, you have more contact with your players all year round. It's a little more mandatory. There's a little more bite to the mandatory piece in terms of like, okay, well, I want to have this internship and it meets at 3:00 in the afternoon. And well, guess what? We have soccer practice. You don't get to go to you don't get to have an internship at 3, but move it to a different time of day and figure out a different time to go. There's different things with it. So NAIA is just a different governing body, you know, mostly private schools with some religious affiliation, things like that. But then there's junior colleges, and JCAA is junior colleges. There's 200 of those out there. They have potentially a lot of scholarships, you know. NAIA, there's some fully funded NAIA schools, unbelievable soccer teams. I mean, like, I'm telling you, they could beat. You know, I saw one Central Methodist, you know, beat Creighton 3-0 last year, right? Like killed them. Wasn't even close. And Creighton's one of the top 20 Division I teams, right? So like those things are out there. You know, I'm just, you know, don't let the division, you know, decide your level, right? And I think one of the things I want to talk about is, you know, don't get caught up in Division I or bust, you know, type of situation, because you can find a better offer sometimes at a Division III school. You can find a better financial situation. You know, the word scholarship, you know, this school might not have 9.9. They might only have 3 scholarships. Barely anybody's on scholarship money, right? You might get a better deal going to a Division III, and that Division III team is going to be better and be playing for championships later in the year versus, you know, a bad Division I team who's not even going to make their conference tournament. So those are some things that I like to talk about. All in all, there's about 1,400 schools out there playing college men's soccer. On the women's side, I'll go through this quickly. There's more. There's about 100 more women's Division I teams playing because of Title IX and some gender equity. There's 14 scholarships as the max in Division I women's. And so if you have a roster of 28 to 30, it's about half scholarship per player if you do the math, if a fully funded program. Division II, 250 teams, so a few more. 9.9 is Division II. Scholarships, 416 on the Division III side. And then, you know, pretty similar numbers on NAIA and junior college compared to the men's. So, you know, that's kind of the breakdown of scholarships. So I like to put that out there as we were getting into this thing and diving into it. Any initial thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, it's interesting. You just showed that. I mean, when I started coaching, it was 1995, and those number of Division I women's programs was tiny compared to what that was. And then there was this huge wave of new programs, and that's how I went from Division II to Division I, was because of a school starting a Division I women's soccer program. And some people might have noticed on your chart that the average athletic aid per student on the women's chart is higher than on the men's chart. And that goes to the point you were making earlier about how much money each school puts into the scholarships that they offer. Because of that Title IX issue, and a lot of these schools that have football programs, they're much more likely to fully fund that women's soccer team with scholarships because they need to balance out all the money they put into football and basketball. So that's why some of those numbers aren't the same in terms of the average aid per athlete on the women's side versus the men's side.
No doubt, right? It's and there's more opportunities out there. It can be a little bit challenging. I mean, I do think, on the men's side, it's there's 100 less Division I teams. There's 50 less Division II teams. I mean, you have some really, and then you factor in the international piece. So like, on the men's side, there's more internationals playing college soccer than you'd believe, right? So it's about 50%, right? If you go across all divisions. So then you're competing with, all these international students for financial aid, and some of them, they're just got cut from Real Madrid's, youth team, and right. They're pretty darn good, right? And they're going to give them a full ride scholarship. So then, on the men's side, then that 9.9 all of a sudden 8.9 for the other 28 guys. Sometimes there's some walk-ons, and sometimes Division II, Division III can be really, really good soccer. There is a wide level, of levels within each division. There's really good Division I on both men's and women's, and there's certain dogs in Division I, right? And then there's some really good, Division III teams that could compete with some Division I teams, and there's some Division III teams that, my teams would beat 15-0, right? Like, there's just the nature of it. So, I say, don't rule anybody out. There's division, look at all your options, and if financial, everybody's different. So when you get into this grand scheme of things, some people could afford anything, and that's and it doesn't really matter. And the financial piece isn't a huge player in the room. Everybody's got different priorities in this process, and that's what I love about it. Is some kids, their most important thing is the level of play. Others is the division, or others is the financial piece. Others, can I afford it? Because is it the right fit for me? Other people I work with, it's truly academic, right? I want to go to the best academic school I can possibly go to set me up. Everyone's got a different reason, and it's a combination of those things. And what schools tick the most boxes for you, but how can you get there? But the problem that I run across, Mark, a lot with people I work with is, you fall in love with these schools, and you don't know the cost. And then you get the cost at the end, and you're like, well, I can't do that. So talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the way that, I mean, it's easy to sort of talk about this thing and sort of use phrasing or use language that makes people think, or it's easy for people to think like we're sort of spinning colleges as the bad guys and all this stuff. It's a marketplace where people who are the colleges that have a thing to sell are going to want you to pay as much as they can get you to pay. That keeps the lights on, gives them a chance to give a salary increase to the faculty, like, do it, run a business, right? And then if you're buying this stuff, you don't want to pay any more than you want to pay. Like, you want to pay as little as possible to get as much as you can get, right? Like, that's just consumer seller marketplace stuff. And I say all that to say that over the last couple of decades, colleges have sort of taken advantage of what marketplaces do to structure something in such a way where their approach is get you to fall in love with them enough that you will send them an application. That's all we're trying to do at the front end of this thing, is just get you to fall in love with me, and then do this little move that just says, oh, don't worry, we'll talk about the money later. Let's talk about the stuff that's important, the experience, the play, and the academics, the careers, our majors, our study abroad, our new dorms, whatever. How much is it cost? Oh, let's talk about the money later. And an uncritical or just a typical consumer who's never gone through the college search before, it's really easy to fall into that, oh, okay, sure. So I'll just start going looking at schools. And as soon as that happens, folks, people just sort of set themselves up for falling in love with school A or school B and school C. And as soon as you fall in love with one place, as a human being, you sort of by default choose not to fall in love with about 100 other places, even though you never heard of them, right? Because you're trying to narrow things down to make it a manageable group. And this is something that it's a human thing, right? And that is what sets up exactly what you described. People that apply to some places that there's no way that they could really afford the price they're going to get, but now they've sort of limited their options. And so one of the things that has been super important to get people to understand in today's marketplace is they have to have a conversation as a family right out of the gate before they start looking at schools. It just says, what's our price range? What's our price range? Whatever it is, I mean, your price range might be $50,000 a year because you can afford it and that's what you choose to do. No judgment. It might be $5,000 a year because it got a whole bunch of other reasons. And none of those reasons could have anything to do with affordability, like you can't make your rent, like, or you just choose not to, right? All of whatever you want is fine, but have that conversation, come up with what's our price range. We need college to be for our kid who's a great kid, $15,000 a year or less, because that's what we want to do. Awesome. Once you do that, now you can start moving forward, combining the academic and the athletic to be able to narrow things in on what's a place that's going to have a good shot at getting us to that ballpark.
No, no doubt. You bring up an interesting point. And so I work with some international kids, right? And I did when I was coaching, and then I work with some international kids now currently. And international kids, when they come to the US, they throw you a budget. And that's the first thing that college coach will ask about an international is like, what's their budget? Because they don't want to chase a kid who says their budget's 5,000. They're not going to be able to get them anywhere near that because it's something because the school for instance, they'll say international kids at our school get half off, right? And so that's just it. There's nothing else they can do. That's how it works. So, and if we can throw some soccer money on it, great. But we might not be able to get them anywhere close to that. But sometimes we could get them close to that and go from there. So the internationals come at you with a different angle on this thing, and they say, "Oh, my budget's 15,000, right?" And then you're like, "Oh, I know some schools that you can get there for 15,000." Now they might not be the name brand, all right, and then might not be the sweatshirt that you want to wear that everybody else wants to see, right? And but I'll be honest, like there's a reason that a lot of NAIAs and Division II schools that maybe people have never heard of are loaded with international players. Well, because they're willing to go there because they can get the price that they want. Right. And for them, it's about price. They don't care what the name is because they've never heard of Oregon, and they've also never heard of Graceland College.
Right.
Throwing it out there, right? Like they've never heard of either of them. So to them,
the difference, right?
The chance to go to school in the United States. That's what it comes down to. So I think that's an interesting segue. How do you feel about this? And I know you talk about this sometimes, and I think this is an interesting topic. And it's I've heard you mention this before, is like it's always not where you go, but it's what you do in college that really matters. And I know it's a little bit off topic, on topic, but I do think it matters to this conversation in terms of finding to the right fit college and the right financial fit college, right?
Well, let's talk about that just in the context of an athlete for a second. Although when I say it, I know from the research on college students that it's generally talking about just any kind of success after college. All of everything we know about student success is that you can succeed in every direction from virtually every college. I can't think of a college out there that's never graduated somebody that went on to be a doctor, or never graduated somebody who went on to be a lawyer, right? Like people, and conversely, lots of big name schools that have graduated knuckleheads who've gone on to do nothing good, right? The range is out there for both and. but let's just take it from the context of an athlete. And I think this is just something that a lot of folks, they just need to think it through before they realize what the assumptions that they've made erroneously. You know, when you're a good youth player and you're the best kid in your club team, your club team's an age group, everybody's the same age group, right? And so you're the best kid on that club team all the way up, because you don't have really a whole bunch of new people coming in. Then when you get to high school, you're the best kid in the high school because it's just not that deep of a pool of players, right? But then going from that to college, you spend all this time like trying to get into college. Well, now it's just a totally different pool of players. And there are so many stories. I mean, you'd probably list them for the next 5 hours if we want to stay on YouTube live long enough. Of players who came into your program and they didn't have all the accolades that you might typically think of or have heard of. And then over the next couple of years, they plugged in, they worked super hard, they grew up, maybe physically, maybe emotionally. And within a couple of years, suddenly that player is this solid, like can't name a starting lineup without that kid being in the middle of it, right? And that's what I mean. It's what you do in college is what really makes your college experience successful. And it's just so true for so much of what we know about college student success, and something that we sort of just forget about. Like, we just, like, so many folks think, okay, once I got my college scholarship, I've suddenly made it and we're off into the, the sunset. And, I've never seen a kid that once they got a college scholarship that suddenly everything worked out just magically for them. They started as freshmen and they were perfect every game, and then they just got better and they were world class. Everybody has the experience where they get to college and look, yeah, you were a left-sided midfielder, but now I'm going to ask you to play left back. Or you're a forward. Yep. Now I'm going to ask you to play a wide midfield, right? Or you played 4-4-2 growing up. I know, but now we're playing with 3 in the middle of midfield. So it's a different system, right? And like, so many things change, and successful college players are the ones that adapt and adjust and do what the team needs. And then the team succeeds, and then they have a great career. And that happens across the board, everywhere. And so it goes back to a lot of the stuff that you were saying earlier about, the levels of play are all over the place. And college student success is a function of what that student does while they're in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, right? Where you're getting into, how does that kid go to med school, right? We're from, okay, well, they hooked on to this professor, and they did all the lab work, and they were the kid that did all the extra stuff with, they did the internship and they did the practicum with the professor. And then they, guess what? That professor has some connections, and then they're going to help them get to the next level. And what are you doing to connect yourself and make yourself better and grow, right? And
Yep.
I always say this too, like, okay, I talk about right fit, and that's the word. I don't really like that, because you grow as a person, and you're not the same person you are at 17 when you're looking at colleges than you are when you're 20 and you're in your junior year and things like that. And so what schools are going to challenge you to become the best person and the best, get to where you want to be, whether it's soccer, like you just talked about, whether it's the academic side. I do agree, like, what do you put into it that's going to get you where you want to be? So I love that.
And that's a big, that thing about, I've been hearing more people use this phrase that you make your own fit. And I like that a lot as a sort of extension of the right fit school kind of thing. Because, I don't know of a single kid who came to college as a freshman, and the freshman year was like the first day they showed up was a perfect fit. And then 2 years later, it was still a perfect fit. Just wasn't, because the school's still pretty much the same, but the kid changed. Now, the kid might have changed in such a ways that then they decided, you know what, I'm going to find a different social group. I'm going to change majors. I'm going to sink my teeth into something new. And then that kid's making their fit, right? And I'm talking about it on social and academic levels. It's the same thing in soccer, right? I was, Mr. Athlete when I was 15. By the time I was 18, I was, thank goodness you got a good left foot. Right. So that, it was, you had to adjust, you had to find a way to make that work. Right. And make your own fit is a really great way to think about this. So that it still doesn't mean that you just should go anywhere. You still need to find a situation where that you feel like, okay, this is a place that want me. They're going to give me a chance. They're going to give me an opportunity. I'm going to have a chance to work. I'm going to get a chance to opportunity and show what I can do. And if I do show what I can do, then I'm going to get respected for it. But then you make your fit from there.
No, 100% agree. Right. I think that's why, we see, coaches that will take international kids over an American kid sometimes, because they're like, you know what, that kid's going to make his own fit. I'm okay with that. Where it's like, certain schools they're looking, coaches want that. Coaches want a kid who's gonna grow, gonna get better, wants to, is not gonna sit there and complain and look for where the grass is greener, right? Like this transfer portal thing. And I won't go into that detail, but like every kid, I think, and you kind of mentioned it, every kid that first year at some point is thinking, is the grass greener somewhere else, right? And that's nature. That's the way the humans work, right? You're looking for something and you don't know, like, okay, I haven't found exactly what I'm looking for yet. But you don't know what you don't know either. You don't know how to get involved in things on campus. Maybe you don't know who to talk to about finding this fit or what's going on campus, and how do I don't even know what I want to study yet, and I haven't found that, and I haven't connected with the right people. But if you do the legwork and you talk to different people and you make the most and make that, I love the make your own fit. I love that. I haven't heard that. I've been trying to make my own words up for it. So I think that's spot on. So
well, take it, use it.
I will.
I mean, how many times as a coach, when you're like halfway through the season and you were kind of thin in one place on the field anyway, and then somebody gets hurt, right? Or somebody gets mono, or somebody gets sick, or, somebody's, significant other broke up with them or whatever, right? And they're a mess, right? And so then you're going, I still have to put a team on the field and we're still trying to do really well, right? So which player am I going to, which player is going to jump in and say, you tell me where you want me to play and how you want me to play and yell at me all as you need to, and I'll adapt and adjust and do the best I can. I'll put that player in, right?
Yeah, right, man. Yeah.
That's making your own fit. And as a player, like at the end of the day, I can think of a number of kids that played for me that they would never have been, they never would have thought of the possibility of them playing in the position they ended up playing in at the end of their 4 years.
No, 100%.
But by the end of that 4 years, they're the very first name I write in on the team sheet, right?
Yep. And
it's because of how they grew and how they made their fit. And then they look back on their college career and go, that was phenomenal. It's phenomenal because I grew, I matured, and I got rewarded for it.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, that was 30 years ago, but I walked in the first day of practice, looked around, and I scored a lot of goals in high school, and I looked around and I was recruited to be a forward. I wasn't even really recruited. It wasn't recruiting back then. It was, I called the coach. I told him I scored a lot of goals. He's like, yeah, I'll take you. Right. Like that's how it was.
That's right.
But and I looked around the first day and these guys I was 135 pounds and I was, wasn't big enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't fast enough. I looked around, but I said, but I'm better than that right back.
Right.
Coach, let me try right back. And he's like, you want to try right back and you're better than that kid? I'll let you play there. And guess what? I played right back for 4 years. So those things can happen. And I think, and I was happy, I got to play. I love my experience, all of that, and that, I think that was part of it. I think you're hitting it right on the head, make your own fit. let's go back to the financial piece and talk about that a little bit. One of the things that I work with families when we get into the weeds with the decision-making process is, it's a bit backwards because you get the financial aid package after you've applied and accepted and you love the place and all that stuff. And then you get your financial aid process late in the process. But what can you do? What can you do ahead of the process to make sure you're finding schools that meet your budget? I think that's a big thing for a lot of families. And maybe we'll start with that one and then I'll get to the next one. Let's just go there first.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as a family, sit down, have an honest conversation about what's our budget, what can we afford, and it's not that there's no judgment in that conversation at all. You're a great parent, period. Set that aside. Like how much you can afford or how much you want to pay for college, no reflection on who you are as a parent or who you are as a kid, anything like that, right? Because we're playing the long game, right? As coaches, as parents, as young people, we're playing the long game, and the long game is way after college, right? So this college things, this 4-year thing, supposed to be pretty cool, great, but you got to have that first conversation about what's our price range. And if you start finding out that, I mean, the nice thing about this is that because the data that you showed earlier about the amount of money that's really out there for scholarships for new incoming students is relatively small, right? That folks can start to use some of the information that's out there that publicly available that they can use to start to figure out, okay, what are the schools that would fit my price range? Let's just say I've picked, I don't know, $15,000 a year for my kid. That means that's what we're writing it. That's what we're paying, right? After scholarships and financial aid, we can come up with $15,000 a year. Now, part of that might be my son or my daughter is working a summer job, and part of it might be that somebody else takes a part-time, whatever it is, it doesn't have to necessarily be the money that you saved up. But let's say you said, okay, 15,000. Well, then there's a couple of things that you're going to know right out of the gate. One, out-of-state public institutions, their starting prices are going to be way outside of 15,000. They're going to be 30, 45. If you're looking at Colorado or Vermont, it's 60, right? And unless they're going to give you an amazing amount of financial aid, mostly in the form of merit, maybe in the form of some need, but mostly in the form of merit, it's never going to get to 15,000. It's just not. So you better be really sure that there's something about a particular out-of-state public that means that it's going to be in the ballpark. That might mean that coaches called you and recruited the heck out of you and said, look, I'm going to put this much money on the table and we're going to get you to 15. But outside of that, we know that those prices are way over the moon. Now, with private institutions, they don't have an in-state and an out-of-state cost. They're all the same. But some private institutions are places where there's lots and lots and lots of people that want to go there. And so they don't have to give you very much money to get you to come. And then there's others that are going to give you a ton of financial aid because they just need students. And the ways that you can start to figure out where you might sit in that realm, one would be looking at, okay, where's our students' GPA? And if you've got a standardized test score, you can use it. How does that compare with the average incoming freshman at that school? If you're about the same as the average kid at that school, then don't go in expecting them to give you 65, 75% of the cost of going to school there. They're just not. But if you're way up high above where that average is, now there might be something there. So there's some ways you can start to articulate this stuff laid out, right? And there are tools out there that can help you do this stuff. Now, I will recommend people use Tuition Fit, and they can use it for free and get lists of schools that are in their price range. That's just how Tuition Fit works. But that's not the only tool there's out there. There's plenty of other tools out there that will sort of estimate what your price might be. They might not be a super accurate, but they're not going to be $50,000 off. So at least you can get some folks in the ballpark. And there's one here in Iowa called College Raptor. There's the one that's based out on the East Coast called EDMIT, EDMIT. You can also use the net price calculators on the school's websites to get a ballpark sense of what your price might be. But it's just so important to make sure that the schools that you're serious about, the schools that you spend time talking them to and thinking about applying to and actually like putting a tape together for and all this other stuff, that it's actually a possibility if they accept you and if you get an offer from them, that price tag is going to be something you can even consider. Because if you really be really determined and bind yourself to that principle of looking at schools that are fit your price range, then at the end of the process, if you've got a couple of offers, you can actually consider all of them. You might even be able to play them off against each other because they're all in your ballpark. And you can really actually end up going to a great place and paying a price that matches your budget. But it all starts with that right out of the gate. What's my price range? Now let me look at schools that fit that list.
No, I like that. I think that's, something that it does. It's hard to do because, sometimes that's not the name brand school that you've heard of, or sometimes it's, it's hard to know where to look to what schools could be your fits and things like that. But, I think if you can do a little extra due diligence on that front end is a positive. One of the terminologies that I think people need to know is EFC, right? And we need to talk about that. So it's estimated family contribution. I talk to families about this all the time. You're more of an expert than me, so I'll hand it off to you and explain what EFC is, and then and how that plays into this.
Sure. So we'll just put the big elephant in the room out there, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. That's the thing that everybody's going to hear about from me 100 times when they talk to me. I hope they talk to you, and you mentioned. Do you think
everybody should fill it out?
There are some people that I don't see that there's a benefit to them to fill it out, but there's not very many. I don't think it hurts people to fill it out. It is a lot easier if you use that tax return retrieval tool that you can use, where you just link your tax return to the FAFSA and then it populates all that information for you. That makes it a lot simpler. You can get it done in 15 minutes. Although that means that you have to know enough to know that you better review everything, because that retrieval tool and automatic conversion actually doesn't catch everything the way it's supposed to. And so things like if you did an IRA rollover that year,
won't get caught.
It won't get caught, and it'll get caught the wrong way, and it'll make it look like you have a lot more money coming in than you do.
Yeah.
But I think that, if a family decides they just absolutely don't want to fill out the FAFSA, then what they need to understand is that they won't get offered the federal student loans, which, if they think they're going to borrow some money to go to college, the federal student loans are a much better deal than the private market. They just are. So if you're not going to have to borrow at all because you're affluent enough to be able to write the check, okay, maybe you don't do it.
Yeah, maybe. I still think you encourage it. I've seen schools that offer $500 early FAFSA scholarship, right? Why not take the $500 even if you don't need it? Like, that's real money to me. I don't know, times 4 years, that's $2,000. I mean, I think it makes some sense. But
yeah, I think it's one of these things where pretty hard to come up with a situation where somebody who is just absolutely, it's sort of demonstrably a bad idea.
Yeah.
But everybody's got their own thing, and some people just have their own thing. But setting that aside for a second, in order to when colleges set their prices, they use two different variables in general to organize how they decide who they're going to assign what price to. They use the academic profile, the kid who's the perfect test score, 4.0 valedictorian, all that stuff, or less, right? And then they use what's the financial need of the family? What's the financial status of the family? And as a proxy to represent what that financial status is, everybody defaults, all the colleges default to the FAFSA. It's a formula that's been around for decades that roughly attempts to estimate what a family should pay to go to college, should be able to contribute for their kid to go to school.
Yeah, estimated family contribution, EFC. That's what the number.
Right. And when you end the FAFSA, when you finish it, you get a number. It's called EFC. And expected family contribution, estimated family contribution. As soon as we figure out what it is, it's going to change anyway. Next year, it's student affordability index, but it's the same principle. Now, families need to understand right away, the formula is not a great formula, and it's not really very accurate in genuinely showing, hey, this is what you actually as a family should be able to afford. But it's a crappy proxy for everybody. So everybody gets stuck with the same crappy proxy of what their financial status is on that need side. So colleges organize their pricing based on the CFC and academic profile. The reason then to know this and know this way ahead of time is because a lot of people don't have any idea what schools are going to decide they think you can afford until they complete their own FAFSA when they're seniors in high school. But you've been looking at schools for a long time before that. You should have been. And what it really helps people to do is do an EFC calculator. There's a ton of them online. There's a ton of free ones. It's not hard to find. And just run one to get a sense of what's this formula gonna say when I actually fill it out for real a year from now? Because when you know that, then you know what the colleges are going to see when they see your stuff and when they just start to say, oh yeah, those people are loaded. Even though that might not be true at all, it's really useful for you to know that ahead of time. And that's why this knowing what your EFC estimate's going to be, knowing what an EFC is to start with, and then running one of these calculators ahead of time can really help you be aware of what you're walking into and help you start shopping for schools.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time that people get the EFC back and they're like, we can't afford what that says, right?
Right.
In terms of, but you need to be able to know that that's what it says and why it says that, and understand a little bit of the things about it, and understand that EFC comes off of, or FAFSA is based on prior year, which is, so my son's a freshman, so he's a 2025 grad, right? It's a few years back away, but to be honest, the financial year that they're going to base his first year of college off of and his EFC is off of my taxes next year, 2023.
Yep.
All right. So I need, going into 2023, for me knowing that, but I'm in this field, I know that. All right. Maybe my business doesn't show as much income that year. I don't know. Like there's a way. I'm not trying to cheat the system, but it's like, how does this play out in the system to get me the best package forward? Not to say you're cheating or anything like that. You're not, but it's, there's ways to, where are you storing your money? Where are your assets, right? It's like some of these things come up. I'm not the expert in that field. I don't know that you are either, Mark, but it's, is there things you can do there?
So there's actually, and it's really great to bring up the prior thing and understanding how this stuff works, because one, there are a bunch of things you can do as a family in organizing your finances to reduce what your EFC will be. A really simple thing is when you fill out the FAFSA, you're not supposed to include money that's in a retirement account for you and your family, you and your spouse.
Right.
That's not money that's supposed to be then counted toward you that you can spend on your kid for college.
Correct.
But some people just have their retirement in a savings account somewhere. And so it's an asset, right? And if it's in that savings account or in that investment account, now it's counted in your assets. And so all of a sudden your EFC is a lot higher only because your retirement money isn't put in a place where it's clearly a retirement account.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of things to do if you're a family that owns a business. If you own a business, you can organize your money in ways where it really brings your EFC down to a much lower and much more palatable number. Or you can organize your money in such a way that makes you look like, oh, you're just rolling in it, right? You're a small business owner. I'm a small business owner. We can talk about all the money that comes in and then goes right back out.
Right.
We don't get a dime of it, right? But it's how you organize your funds. So it's super important for families if they're, regardless really of where they are right now. Maybe they've got a student that's a freshman in high school, so they've got some time to plan. But even if you've got a student that's a senior in high school right now, and you're just hearing all this stuff for the first time, you still have to fill out a FAFSA every year while your kid's in college. So, okay, so your FAFSA you just completed with prior tax return information, and you didn't organize everything the best way you could. Well, look into how you can get things organized now, because when your kid's a junior in
Right.
college, you'd like to benefit from all of a sudden showing an EFC that's more accurate and potentially getting more financial aid in the form of need for the last 2 years, maybe 3 years of their college career, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. There are questions popping up. Keep asking them. We'll get to those in a minute, but I do need to get to the big thing, and that's okay. You're at the end of your process. You're trying to make a decision on a college, and the situation happens, and you're trying to pick a school based on financial need and or everything, the overall fit, right? And part of that is financial.
Yep.
And how do you, let's say you got 2, 3, 4 offers, and they're not what you expected, or one's better than the other, but it's not the school you really want to go to. Let's talk about asking for more, leveraging offers, these types of things.
Sure. And I think it's important to differentiate between if we're talking about trying to get a better package. I mean, I think it's really valuable for a family. Always frame it in the context of, we're just as a family trying to get the best ROI, right? Because college is expensive no matter where we're going to go. And, if maybe we're looking at 2 schools and one's going to cost about 12 grand a year, and another one's going to cost 15 grand a year. Well, in our world, that's $12,000 over 4. That's a lot of money, right? Like in our world, that's a lot of money. So when you're talking with the school and you're communicating, whether it's with the academic, with the admissions office or financial aid, or even if it's with a coach, I don't think it's out of bounds to say, for us, this is just a really important financial decision, because it's about really trying to get the best value for the best price, because our financial situation, the college thing, sits in a much larger financial context for us as a family. And that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to do this as the smartest business decision possible.
Yeah, and I think anybody can ask, right? Like even if you're, well-to-do and you got some things going, I think it's within your rights, and you should. I think
Absolutely.
You should. I think,
Absolutely.
And I tell people this all the time: ask for more. Is there more opportunity? And be very gracious about it, right? Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the package. I like your school a lot. Is there anything else we can do to make this situation happen? Because the end all be all, right, is schools are looking for students, right? And a lot of these schools, not all of them, but a lot of them need students to keep the lights on. They need bodies.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, right?
Yep.
They need numbers, and they're going to say, you know what, if we give Johnny 3,000 more to get him to 12,000, we still get Johnny. If we don't give Johnny the 3,000 more, guess what? Johnny's going to go down the street.
And we might not have anybody who replaces Johnny.
Correct. And now we're down,
Right.
12,000 a year times 4, and the school's at,
So a whole nother deal.
yeah,
And,
right.
and I think the way that you said that, like, one, you can always ask for money. Two, if you're gracious and you explain to the school and you come to them with a, thanks for offering us an opportunity. We're super thrilled. We love the place. We met some great people while we've been exploring schools. Super important experience for us. And we're just trying to make the best choice for us as a family and for the long-term interests of our kid. They can't fault you for that. They're not going to get mad at you.
Right.
The only way you're going to screw this up as a family is if you go in and you're not gracious and you're like, my kid's the best kid in the county, and how come you don't, and start shaking your head around, like, come off like that. Now, maybe sadly, I don't know, the college is still already accepted you, so you still already got a spot there, but they're not going to be as interested in trying to make it work. If you come to them graciously, they really are going to be interested in trying to make it work, because like you said, they need students. And so when you build a relationship with the school that's a sort of, hey, let's work together so that we can say yes, you're going to find that schools will really oftentimes try to help find a justification for them to give a little bit more money to make it work so you can say yes.
No, I agree. And I want to clarify a few things. So the NCAA has rules, right? So like going to a coach and a coach saying, he's not going to be able to give you maybe more scholarship money because his hands are tied and he's only got 9.9 and he's used them all the scholarship money and things like that. Most the leveraging or the asking, typically director of admissions, your admissions counselor. I don't know if you feel the same way I feel. Sometimes I say copy the coach on it because sometimes the coach is going to, at least they're in the know. Like at Division III, the coach can't have anything to do with financial aid and isn't going to be really involved, but they might know about it that hey, you're asking for more. I mean, that's not a bad thing to have. But in regards to where we fall with everything, would you agree with that? You go through the admissions office or those types of things?
First thing I would say is,
or financial office. Yeah.
Yeah. Like every school's going to have a policy about how they would like you to proceed if you're going to ask for more money. Yep. And usually they call that an appeals process.
Right.
And it's valuable to know what that process is and then start by following it. Right. Because if you don't, then they're just going to tell you, hey, go here. And you're going to have spent some time spinning wheels. But then on top of that, there's the relationships that you built. So you've worked with an admissions counselor, you've talked to them, you've emailed with them about stuff. They've, sent you a card saying, hey, I hope you come and join our Facebook group. And the coach has seen you play and whatever else. So those relationships matter. And it says a lot about your character to that coach or that admissions officer when you communicate with them as you're trying to sort through this process, right? So if they see you as somebody who's really on the up and up and honest about what your situation is and really trying to be straight with them about it, that's going to tell them something about you that's going to translate into one, how they respond to that, and then two, your experience with that coach when you got to play for them.
All right. And so, I like that, every school is different, right? I think sometimes you ask the coach, hey, because that might be the person you had the most relationship with, right? Yeah. And you've been recruited by this coach, and you might say, hey, coach, we really love it there. We really think it's a great opportunity, but we need, some more financial aid. We don't know if you can be involved in that or not, but if not, who should we talk to? Or how do we go approach the appeals process? That could be an easy first. And they might say, yeah, please reach out to director of admissions, and if the coach knows, sometimes, on the backside, they're in the office of the admissions director or the financial aid director, and they'll be like, is there anything else we can do for Johnny? Right. He's a really good student and all these
Yep.
different things. So I like that approach. I think it's, trying to figure out what that best fit is. What about, you're in a situation, and sometimes in athletics, they're saying, okay, you're a junior. You don't even, it's not, your senior year hasn't even started yet. They want you to commit to your school. But you don't even know what the financial aid package looks like.
Right.
They might say, hey, we're going to give you this much athletic scholarship, but you don't know what the merit is. You haven't even filed your FAFSA yet. How do you proceed with that in terms of like making a decision, committing, not knowing what that is, and can you ask for more out of that? And I mean, it's complicated, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's sort of two sides of saying the same thing, and I'm going to try to say both of them. The one side is, if that coach is going to put you under pressure to commit way before they have, there's anything that says you got to sign on something, and they're going to play that game that way, then you can commit if you want and then walk away from it in a week. Like I don't have any patience for coaches that play that game. So, and that's probably my opinion, but I think that is a reality now for a lot of coaches. They're recognizing, one, they're trying to get lots of people to commit early as they possibly can, and then their plan is to hold on to them. But they also know that a whole bunch of those kids are eventually going to change their minds late, and so they're already recruiting a bunch of other people anyway, right? So I mean, if a coach is going to sort of play that game, then you're allowed to play that game to the fullest of your own ability yourself, right? And if they really want a commitment, okay, commit to them, and then you just keep looking. So that's my one side of my opinion. I say that with my tongue sort of half in my cheek and half being like, no, if they're going to be that way, then you can play it too. The other way, though, is this. If they can't tell you what your actual price is going to be, then unless you know you can write a check for the difference, then you can't commit to that.
Right.
You just can't. You don't know what you don't know. And it is not entirely unheard of for a coach to have to go to somebody who got somebody to commit a year early and say, you know what, situations have changed. And I can't honor the scholarship that I promised you. I'm really sorry, but I can't do that. You haven't signed anything. It's bad press, but there's certainly been college athletic programs that have had to cut scholarships, maybe because they got in trouble with the NCAA, maybe because the school had budget problems. You just don't know what you don't know. Not to mention the fact that, I don't know if people have know this, but coaches leave. Yes, people know this, right? I'm not saying anything. I don't mean that seriously, but coaches leave. And until there's pen to paper, and it's not real. So, yes, there's coaches out there that say, all right, I'm going to offer 5 kids the same amount of money, and the first one to take it gets it, and the other 4 out. Sorry. Okay, that's the way they're going to play it. And as a player, as a young person, don't lose your sort of true north here. Don't lose that sense of, is that the person I want to play for 4 years?
Right.
Maybe it is, but be real honest about that, and don't let that pressure put you in a situation. Again, when we're talking about soccer money, it's a little bit easier because you can say, like, the soccer money is still going to be kind of small.
Yeah.
The rest of the money is going to come from the institution, and you haven't even applied yet. And you don't know what kind of merit you got. So
I think you can always ask for more time, right? But they may not be able to honor that. They might say we're going to move on to somebody else. But I think you're right. Like, when it's a verbal commitment, it's not in stone. Like, you can walk away from it and find something else that might be better and stuff like that. But it's got to do due diligence, and you got you have to have thick skin in this sometimes too, right? Like,
Yep.
it's the recruiting game. You're going to get some no's, you're going to get some yeses, you're going to get a lot of silence from coaches that aren't interested, and then you get into the financial aid piece, right? That becomes complicated, and so there's some stress in this for you, for your family, and we're trying to reduce it by having opportunities here to teach you a little bit about how it works and what you can do to get your best financial fit. One other things, I'll check the questions. I don't know. I think you answered one already in the chat. In the Q&A, you can type anything in if you're interested. I think you answered this one.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so it's a combination of academic and athletic pay for the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, there's times, and it does happen, where you get a full ride, basically a full ride by a combination of academic and athletic money, for sure.
That made all the difference for me when I was in Division I. We were fully funded, so we had 9 at the time, for women's soccer, it was 9 scholarships. After I got out of coaching, women's got bumped up to 14 in Division I. But at the time, I had 9 scholarships, and they wanted me to have a roster of 28 players. And the school I was at had a great set of academic scholarships where they waived the out-of-state fees if you had a certain minimum GPA and test score. So I would find kids from out of state, and if they met that criteria, then they'd get a whole bunch of academic aid. I'd give them a little bit of athletic money, and the combination of that would pay for a lot of school, and it wouldn't actually count against me quite as much because this was an out-of-state student, and so they're a full out-of-state scholarship meant that same amount of money would count for a smaller percentage than if it was an in-state kid. So I say all that to say, I was always looking for ways to combine academic aid with athletic aid.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, there's a lot of schools out there that can do some of these different things, and knowing that, that's an advantage. Like, I feel like working with me, like I know some of these schools that will say, okay, you go there, you get reciprocity, or you get this going to this place, and you can get a lower starting price and things like that. There was one that just popped up. Are the Google price based on income relatively close to what you can expect to pay? What do you think about that? I mean, I'm guessing they're asking about the Google EFC, or the price that's, maybe it says like what the estimated price is for.
I'm guessing what they're talking about when they say the Google price is, they've Googled the school, and when you use Google to search for schools, Google has a function that sort of brings up some basic information about each institution and organizes it in such a way that helps you sort of see the stuff that you need to see. And so they'll have in there somewhere the sticker price that school's posted. And that's because that's a number that the school has to report to the federal government. And then they'll also have what's called the average net price.
Right.
And that is an average of all of the students at that institution, because they're all paying a different price. And then what's the average of all of those prices? And so that number, a lot of schools, that number is about half of what the sticker price is. And that's sometimes entirely based on need. Sometimes it's entirely based on need and merit, just depending on how that school does it. The challenge that the question sort of sets up is that average price is not the actual price that most people pay. That average price is just the combination of what everybody pays, and your price could be $10,000-$20,000 on either side of it.
Right. I know there's a couple more questions popping up, but I want to talk real quick, and we're not going to spend all night on this because you and I probably could talk forever. That's why we need to get coffee again soon. But the financial aid package itself, they all come, we briefly touched on it at the very beginning. And sometimes, one school's financial aid package, I see it all the time, because I'll ask my clients to say, hey, send me your financial aid packages. I'd like to see them so that I can actually do a side-by-side comparison, because I've seen them all. I know what these look like. I know how they look differently from place to place. and they make it look like sometimes they're giving you a better value than they really are, because they throw in extra loan and they count that towards their, money that they're giving you, but it's loan money. You have to pay loans back.
Mhm.
All right. And you're actually paying interest on them. So you're paying a little bit more. And sometimes, like I saw one recently and it had the plus loan in it. And, so on paper, if you didn't know what you were looking at, it looked like it was, $6,000 cheaper to go to school A than it was school B. But in reality, after all the loans they threw on there, they basically covered the gap on that loan. And in reality, school B was cheaper, by $5,000, but it made it look the other way around, because their packaging included this loan stuff and work study, which is also another one. They'll throw in work study. Work study, for folks that don't know, is it's an aid because you have to work on campus, and they pay you pretty much minimum wage mostly, and you have to earn that amount of money. So let's say they give you a work study award for $2,500. You can earn up to $2,500 that year if you put in enough hours. I mowed lawns as a freshman. I mowed the campus, right, with a push mower. It was brutal, but I made some money and I got a workout in. It was fine, but I couldn't make $2,500. It wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so most kids don't even get close to that number on work, especially if you're playing a sport. It's really, really difficult. Yes. So they throw this number in there that you're never going to meet. Then you throw in loans that maybe you don't want to take. And so what the real number isn't what the reflective package looks like. I don't know if you can say that better than I can.
Well, I don't know if I can say it better than you can, but it's absolutely true. Work study is something that if you qualify for it because of financial need, they'll, say you qualified for $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 of work study. But that just means you're eligible for it. It doesn't mean you got it. Right. And as an athlete, it's even harder to find a job that you can fit the time in when you're still trying to play your sport and trying to do school. Even if you're not an athlete, it doesn't mean that the school is going to have a work study job that you can get. And it doesn't even mean that the school is going to have a work study job that you can get that doesn't conflict with the classes that you're in. Right. And it'd be crazy to not take the required freshman course that you need to take because you took work study. And then by doing that, have to stick around for another semester after your 4 years is up. That doesn't make any sense. So it's super important to sort of know some of these details about how these award letters work and how the money works.
Right. So, I always say, work study, loan, that's all, that's money you're going to have to pay back, or it's money you have to earn. So don't count that towards your, what the bottom line pricing is. The bottom line pricing to me is what it's going to cost before loans, and then you can add that in. And then if you, difference between the federal loans and the plus loan, if you want to chat about that quick.
Yeah. So federal loans, either subsidized or unsubsidized, details on that is just about when the interest starts to accrue. But those are loans that are automatic to the student, and you qualify for it. You're offered it. You qualified for it. Done. Right. You just have to decide if you're going to accept taking them or not.
Right. Plus
loan is a loan that's offered to the parents, not to the student. It's offered to the parents. You'll often see them in the award letter. There's a plus loan line in there. Sometimes they'll say this is other money that you might be able to get. And other times they just throw it in the letter as if it's money that's automatic. But one, plus loan interest rates are a lot higher than the student loan interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
Two, parents still has to qualify for it. So you can get offered it. It can be in the award letter. You think, oh, great, this is awesome. And then in July, find out, oh, by the way, you didn't actually qualify for that plus loan after all. And now you're pulling your hair out. So the plus loan is really kind of a dicey prospect. The third thing about it is that it's an unlimited loan, right? And what happens so often is because it's unlimited, the award letter even sometimes will just load up on the plus loan to make that bottom line dollar number doesn't look like it's not much.
I've seen it where they put the bottom line dollar to zero.
Oh yeah, I do webinars where I show people award letters we've got in our system from people that have shared them, and yeah, and it'll say out-of-pocket expenses if you accept all this, zero.
Right.
And there's a $30,000 plus loan sitting right there.
$30,000 plus loan, $5,500 in federal loan, and
Yep,
$2,500 in work study, right?
Right.
Like,
But
so,
zero out of pocket.
right.
Maybe you're wearing sweats, so you don't have pockets. I don't know I don't understand how that works, but that's what they got.
No, that's spot on. So I just wanted to explain that to folks. Like, one of the things I do, and is when you're in that process, and we get to the financial aid time, is I break them down, right? I'm like, okay, this is, because I've done this for 30 years, right? I've seen all the packages. I've seen other schools' packages. I know what things mean and how that plays in. And then I can say, oh, this is the reality of it. This is what your bottom line pricing is, things like that. So it's important to know. And this has been a really good conversation.
Yeah.
It's always fun to talk to you, and it's nice. We're like-minded. We have the same ideas, and then we have soccer background to add on to it. So it's
that's right.
That makes it even more fun. So, I did record it. I'm going to put it out there to folks. And Mark, if we want to get in touch with you or learn about Tuition Fit, what do they need to do?
They can go to tuitionfit.org, and they can email me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at tuitionfit.org.
Great. No, that's great info. And I appreciate you taking the time out on a Sunday night here.
No problem. It's great
to meet with me and chat about this stuff, and a lot of great important information. Again, Dan Rother, Top Student Athlete Recruiting. You need to get a hold of me at topstudentathlete@gmail.com. I appreciate everyone joining tonight. And again, if you're watching on the recording, and you have questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Mark.
Have a good night, Dan.
All right.